Our speaker, Professor Brownhilder Neneh, members of the university executive who are present, I've noticed that one or two colleagues will be joining us, and I think Dr. Molabo Kobela, our DVC, is with us. Senior management of the university, I've noticed a few deans, Professor Louisa Gita, some vice deans from faculties, really welcome to you. The Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, Professor Philippe Berger. The Deputy Dean, Professor Frans Prinsloo, I know will leave us for other commitments, but thank you for being here. Heads of departments from the faculty, Dr. Marieve Biljon, who's the head of the Department of Public Administration, colleagues from the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences, as well as colleagues from other faculties, and very importantly also students. A special word of welcome to our distinguished inaugural lecturer, Professor Brownhilder Neneh, her family, friends, and significant others who will be joining us, joining her, I would say, in support, some who are online with us tonight. But let me single out a few of them. Professor Neneh's husband and kids. The husband, Dr. Silas, I believe is with us. Kids, Zina Berry and Zian Joel Vergicha, who are present. Her sister, Mrs. Courage Nana, who is also present, thank you. Her parents and brothers, Mr. George Ngek and Mrs. Agnes Ngek, and Dr. Larry Ngek are joining us online. And of course, friends who are present. Very good evening to all of you. It gives me a real great pleasure as Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Internationalisation at the University of the Free State to welcome you all on the occasion of Professor Neneh's inaugural lecture, which is very appropriately titled Thriving versus Surviving the Entrepreneurial Journey, a Balancing Act for Youth and Women. This evening, we continue with a time-honored tradition that holds great significance in the life of any university. It is a tradition where inaugural lectures are more than just a personal milestone for an individual. In fact, they provide our university community with an opportunity to engage, to hear about what is happening in other disciplines, and to learn about probably the most topical themes and issues in diverse fields. This occasion of the inaugural lecture should be a platform for all faculties and disciplines to be present so that we can give meaning to what we often say we do in research. For an academic, the inaugural lecture is a profound landmark event in their career. It symbolizes the culmination of many years of demanding work in research, I would even say dedicated work in research, teaching, and indeed engaged scholarship. An inaugural lecture, by right, is about a body of knowledge, the area of work that tells a story of what the lecturer believes he, she, perhaps they stand for, and what they believe they profess. It is an achievement that reflects perseverance, intellectual rigor, and the inaugural lecturer's lasting impact on the academic world. When we say a body of work, a life's work, we mean, Professor Neneh, that there still remains for you, I know, much more work to be accomplished as someone who begins the journey of professing a discipline and a body of knowledge. So in other words, a professor's work is but the beginning of much unfinished business. So today and tonight is all about you and about your work. As a university, the University of Free State, as you all know, we strive very hard to be an institution that can make a difference, that conducts groundbreaking research, including also, very importantly, creative work through disciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches to address what you all know as to be wicked problems in the world and challenges that face our society, our country, even the globe. So, colleagues, we recognize Professor Neneh's achievements and take pride and pleasure in celebrating the significant achievement with the wider university community and, of course, the broader publics that make up the university. As with tradition, I now request the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Philippe Berger, to introduce Professor Neneh. Thank you.
Good evening. This is a very special evening. So, in 2011, I heard about this brilliant master student in the Department of Business Management. And only 2 years later, she got her PhD in business management. She did this, in other words, in minimum time that one can attain a PhD in. You can't do it faster than 2 years. She was only 26. And I'm, of course, talking about Professor Neneh. Just 9 years later, she became a full professor in business management, and a mere year later, the vice dean of research and internationalization in the faculty. Quite a performance for a mere decade, something which takes other academics somewhat more time. She is also an NRF-rated researcher. Her primary focus is on fostering research and development of entrepreneurial competencies and behaviors vital for successfully navigating the entrepreneurial pipeline, with a special emphasis on students and women entrepreneurship. We very often talk about research with impact, but her research focus is particularly impactful because, as we all know, women and the youth face the largest burdens of unemployment in South Africa. And many women are also household heads, having the sole burden to take care of children. And yes, this does not say much in favor of many men who fathered these children, but that is unfortunately the reality and challenge for which we as a society still need to find a solution. In women's entrepreneurship, she examines unique issues that affect women-owned businesses, women's work-life balance and well-being, and unearths how the family and business domains are intertwined, both to the benefit and detriment of these women. She does this to provide evidence-based approaches for mitigating the challenges and leveraging the benefits. I can add that she also recently launched a book addressing the choices women face when trying to balance their work with life. In that book, she does not provide a single one-size-fits-all recipe, but shows that each woman needs to find a balance that suits her particular circumstances. For student entrepreneurship, she is particularly concerned about how students can move from simply having business ideas to actually acting on those ideas and turning them into real enterprises. Professor Neneh was a visiting scholar at the University of North Carolina in 2022. She was also a recipient of funding for the Erasmus mobility program at the Fulda University of Applied Science in Germany in January 2023. She won the Teaching and Learning Award in 2018 of the faculty and the Best Senior Researcher Award both in 2019 and 2023. She was the 2019 winner of the Emerald Literati Award for the highly commended paper published in the African Journal of Economics and Management Sciences. And she was the winner of the 2022 Research in Learning and Teaching Advanced category, which is an overall prize for the university. In 2023, she made the list of the 28 UFS researchers, being number 9 on that list, of the Stanford Elsevier ranking of top 2% most cited researchers in the world. The selection is based on the top 100,000 scientists in the world, according to their publications. Outside of her professional career, she also founded the She Believe, a peer support group designed to empower and uplift women. Now that you've heard all of this, I also want to highlight what it means to get here, because you sometimes hear the headlines, but what is it that you need to get to those headlines? That which does not happen in the headlight, in the limelight. So there's a number of things. Number one thing required is, of course, time. You need to put in the time. Most of us are appointed on contracts, at least 8 hours a day. But I can tell you, to reach this height, you need to do more than 8 hours per day. You need to sacrifice those evenings, those nights, those early mornings, those weekends. And all of that you need to do to reach that top of the scholarly ladder that you climb as an academic. And yes, those hours do count. But these hours in themselves are not enough. There are a few additional prerequisites that scholars who reach this point in their career need to fulfill. The first is a deep, insatiable curiosity about the world, and in particular, your field of expertise. You must want to know how things work, want to unpack them, disassemble them, probe them, all in an effort to truly understand them. And that she has done. The second aspect is that good scholars also know that the world in which they live is not simple. There are no superficial answers. And the DVC already alluded to this. Most of what we call wicked problems of the world are truly complex questions and do not have a single answer. Understanding problems, solving problems are always multifaceted. There are no silver bullets. One needs to keep on asking the questions, probe, and consider whether there is more to it than what you find in the first or even second round of investigation. That's why those nights are so important. The third aspect is intellectual honesty. The economist John Maynard Keynes famously asked someone, "When the facts change, I change my mind, what do you do?" Okay? So this, and lastly, to succeed as a scholar, and it links up closely with what I just mentioned in terms of intellectual honesty. To succeed as a scholar, you also requires what the famous political scientists John Mearsheimer and Stephen Van Evera called a balanced hubris-humility index. The hubris refers to the need to have sufficient self-confidence as a scholar to present your research findings with flair and conviction. But the humility also needs to come in, and it refers to the need to balance that hubris with the acceptance that most knowledge is provisional, contested, and subject to revision. And that we therefore need to know that what we present is merely a contribution to an ongoing conversation in which we might have to change our minds, as Keynes mentioned. And that is a good thing. It keeps us in a job, by the way. So, as someone once said, what good is a mind if you cannot change it? So, but all of these things show that walking the walk on the path of scholarship is not easy and requires a lot of effort and deep thinking. An inaugural lecture, like tonight's, is an important marker on that path of deep thinking. It shows that here is someone whose thoughts as a scholar we should take seriously. Someone whose thoughts and work has already had an impact. It is also a signal, a message to the world to say, from this scholar, big things are coming. So watch this space. So, Neneh, from my side, a hearty congratulations. This is a well-deserved achievement.
Thank you so much, Prof. Berger, for the warm introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin with tonight's lecture, I would like to express my sincere appreciation for everyone sitting here today. Thank you so very much for being part of this event. As a young girl growing up in Cameroon, I saw both my parents work full-time jobs alongside running your business on the side. My mom, in particular, juggled multiple roles, and the roles I speak to being a mom, a wife, a full-time employee, and a side business owner. During the school holidays, my mom would encourage my sister and myself to use the allowance she gave us to make extra income. Through this, I saw firsthand how women, particularly in the informal sector, played a significant role in various entrepreneurial activities. and it wasn't uncommon to see mothers engaging in various entrepreneurial activities to support their families. During my undergraduate studies, my dad tasked me to managing his business while studying full-time. He believed balancing both would provide me with a valuable experience for my future career. This responsibility brought a lot of challenges, such as balancing my schoolwork and handling business-related problems. Despite the ups and downs, this experience taught me valuable lessons and unknowingly set me on the path on becoming a researcher in entrepreneurship. Looking back, little did I know that this lived experience would shape my interest and career in entrepreneurship. So coming back to my topic, thriving versus surviving the entrepreneurial journey, a balancing act for youth and women. So tonight I invite you and I want to take you down with a journey with me as I unpack my research journey. So my research has primarily focused on the entrepreneurial pipeline, but today, instead of focusing on one current research, I'll rather demonstrate how the various articles I have written contribute to a bigger coherent story in the youth and women entrepreneurship, and how the work I've done in one article raised questions that I addressed and subsequently answered in other articles to create meaningful impact in the entrepreneurship field. So to begin, I think it's important that we highlight why entrepreneurship is important. At the micro level, I think owing to the high level of unemployment, underemployment, and poverty, entrepreneurship provides alternative career paths beyond full-time employment. And it also provides individuals with a way to create income and become financially independent. At the macro level, it provides, it creates room for economic development and growth, and also it creates room for competition and innovation. And as such, many governments around the world, including the South African government, is now recognizing entrepreneurship as a solution to addressing the triple challenge of inequality, poverty, and unemployment. And this also is in alignment with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So when I look at my research now on youth entrepreneurship, I think one of the first questions I've always wanted to ask myself is, which has always been the point of departure for me, what drives individuals to pursue an entrepreneurial career? And then the questions I've often asked is, what individual, what motivational, what contextual factors shape entrepreneurial intentions and behavior? And again, the question I've often asked is, how does what we know about these factors contribute to entrepreneurship policy and practice? So when it comes to entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial process consists of two stages. And the first stage is what we call the entrepreneurial intention. The second stage is what we call the entrepreneurial behavior. Entrepreneurial intention is the first stage where individuals form the desire to start the business. Then the entrepreneurial behavior is the second stage where individuals now take concrete steps to start and operate the business. And in this case, I mean where they decide to translate their intentions to behavior. So when I look at my research, what exactly have I done? I conducted research among students in the EMS faculty. And among the so many questions I asked them, one thing I asked was, can you rate your career path upon completing your degree? And interestingly, the students firstly picked the hybrid. And hybrid is when you have a full-time job and you have a side business on the side. Secondly, in terms of career paths, they wanted to be full-time employees. And then lastly, they wanted to be full-time entrepreneurs. In a subsequent study, I carried on to find out what were the different types of hybrid entrepreneurship. And my research found out that there were two types. The first one you call the persistent hybrid entrepreneurs, and the second one, the transitory hybrid entrepreneurs. And persistent hybrid entrepreneurs are people who have full-time jobs, but they also have a side business on the side, but they never plan to transition into full-time entrepreneurship. Transitory hybrid entrepreneurs, on the other ones, are people that they have a full-time jobs and they also have a side business, but they use it as a stepping stone to eventually transition into full-time entrepreneurship. So with this background that I got as I began my research in the early 2016, I now carried on to focus on full and hybrid entrepreneurs. So building on the theory of planned behavior, I also wanted to find out what were the different motivational factors or factors that will push entrepreneurs, or rather push or pull students to consider entrepreneurship as a career path. And also to look at were there any demographic variables that could explain that relationship. And in subsequent research, I found out that factors such as unemployment, poverty, and job insecurity were the push factors that forced students to start a business. In terms of the pull factors, I found out that autonomy, innovation, and opportunity identification were the factors that will encourage students to consider entrepreneurship as a possible career path. And again, I found out that factors such as the family background played a role in students making that decision to become entrepreneurs. I also found out that entrepreneurship education indeed made a difference as to whether students would decide to consider entrepreneurship as a possible career path. And then now I moved to another research, looking at entrepreneurship education. And this is a research I've conducted on my own, and also I've supervised almost 20 students, and some of the students have focused on this, where I use what we call a quasi-experimental design and a two-way studies, asking, could entrepreneurial education enhance intentions and behavior? And of course, my research showed that entrepreneurship education could enhance intentions and behavior. But I also wanted to find out what were the determinants, what personality traits were the factors that could enhance intentions and also enhance actual behavior. And in all the studies that I did, the factors that came to light that could enhance intentions is, for example, entrepreneurial passion, entrepreneurial alertness, perceived access to finance, entrepreneurial attitude, social support, entrepreneurial self-efficacy. And in terms of actual behavior, we found that intentions indeed leads to actual behavior. Then factors such as greed, resilience, financial capital, and prior experience could also enhance entrepreneurial behavior. Then again, in my research, as I progressed, research showed that even when people form the intentions to start the business, intentions never actually translate to actual behavior. And in entrepreneurship research is what we term the intention to behavior gap. So now I wanted to find out under which condition, what process would explain that why people would now say if I form an intention, I could actually translate to behavior. So most of my research over the last few years now has focused on closing the intention to behavior gap. And among most of the factors that I've done, you'll see that I found out factors such as self-control, internal locus of control, anticipated regrets, entrepreneurial self-efficacy, proactive personality, social capital, commitment. Those are the factors that could either act as moderators or mediators to this relationship. And my research showed that these factors could be enhanced via entrepreneurship education. For others, they would need to study it. For others, it was an innate trait that was born in them. So these are just examples of some of the studies that I've conducted over the last few years that speaks to the intention to behavior gap. And now in terms of my most current paper that was presented on Monday this week, a colleague of myself, Dr. Obey, presented this paper on Monday. The GEM report every single year reports that the fear of failure is one of the reasons that impairs people from starting a business in South Africa. So in our study, we wanted to do the following. We wanted to find out what were the dimensions of fear of failure that would impair people from starting the business. And in that study, we found out something quite interesting. We found out that dimensions such as personal ability to manage a business and the potential of the idea to be accepted in the market were the dimensions of fear of failure that impeded people to start the business. And we also found out that there was indeed a gender difference, with women exhibiting a higher fear of failure than the men. And as such, we made recommendations to say that entrepreneurship educators should consider idea validation boot camps as part of their courses. They should also consider including idea refinement support groups, specifically targeting women, should be developed, because this would allow them to share your ideas, receive feedback, and refine your business concepts. Again, in the most current study with my colleagues, Dr. Ulu from the UK and a colleague of mine, Dr. Obey, we noticed that researchers, and in all special issues, we've been told that generative AI tools such as ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot play a crucial role in the entrepreneurial process. But then the question is, even though AI has the potential to transform the entrepreneurial process, its full potential can only be realized by individuals who have AI literacy. So our research examined the different dimensions of AI literacy that could enhance entrepreneurial intentions and behavior. And the findings showed that, in particular, cognitive learning, and by cognitive I mean learning knowledge and understanding of how AI works, including basic concepts like machine learning, algorithm and data processing, and affective learning, and I mean people's emotional response and attitude towards AI, does enhance entrepreneurial intentions. In terms of entrepreneurial behavior, we found out that cognitive and behavioral learning enhance entrepreneurial behavior. So having said this, now when you look at the future research in terms of what is happening in the field, there's so much talk about leveraging AI to level the playing ground for youth entrepreneurs. And I think that this is something that future research, including myself and researchers in the field, we are going to be looking at. How could we use AI to enhance the entrepreneurial practices in terms of idea generation, business operation, strategy formulation, and decision-making processes? Then again, another gray area is evidence-based intervention that is needed in the country. Currently, we have a lot of entrepreneurial training programs, incubators. Everyone is doing everything everywhere, but there's no evidence in terms of what is working. And I feel that that is also another gray area which we really need to go out and see. What was taught? How was it being taught? What is the success factors? And then how can the knowledge produced in studying entrepreneurs in real life be transferred to the classroom and to the students? So having taken you through my journey of what I've done in terms of the youth entrepreneurs, I'm actually struggling with some questions in my mind. And why am I struggling with the questions before I unpack them? If you look at the current stats in the country in terms of unemployment, you can see the figures for yourself. Indeed, it's high. When you look at youth unemployment, again, it's high. When you look at the intentions, people who have formed the desire to start a business, you can see that South Africa is lacking when you compare them with the African average. And when you look at the total entrepreneurial activity, those are the people with the behavior, you can see that South Africa is still lacking behind the African average. Then if you carry on to look at the nascent entrepreneurs, and nascent entrepreneurs are people who have committed resources to start a business, but they are less than or not more than 3 months old. You can see that South Africa again is lacking behind the African average. When you look at the new business ownership, and those are people that will own businesses, but they are not more than 42 months old, you can see that South Africa again is lacking behind. And when you go to established business, that is even worse. You can see that South Africa is indeed really, really lacking. And in terms of business discontinuity, you can see that indeed there was a slight change for 2022 and 2023. But then again, you see that when you have to compare over the years, you see that indeed South Africa is lacking. So the questions I'm asking myself today are the following. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to the slide, but it's fine. I'm going to read it. The questions I'm asking myself today are the following. Are youth entrepreneurs who have never been employed before equipped to start a business? That's the first question I'm asking myself. I'm not sure why the slide decided not to show. So that's the first question I'm asking myself tonight. Are youths who have never been employed before equipped to run businesses? Indeed, entrepreneurship is supposed to address the aspects of unemployment. But what is it policymakers need to start looking at is the question we need to ask ourselves. And there are a couple of things I am recommending. The first one speaks to hybrid entrepreneurs. There are a lot of hybrid entrepreneurs who have started businesses, and many of them have transitioned into full-time entrepreneurs. And many of them transitioned in their late 30s and 40s, and they did that when they've already amassed a lot of resources in terms of capital, networks, and that enabled them to transition into full-time entrepreneurship. Then the question we need to be asking is, youth who have no experience, can they really start businesses? Shouldn't policy now advocate to say we should now perhaps look at the model of Finland, Denmark? I know South Africa is its own country and has its own context, but can we contextualize it within the South African context? where we tell people who already, because everyone in the country, if I had to ask everyone here today, do you have a side business? Of course. Where we say we give you some time off to go refine that idea. Isn't that another possibility? It's a question that I'm asking. The second one I'm also asking is what we call corporate entrepreneurship, which is in another word we call entrepreneurship. This is when businesses or organizations have to choose to think entrepreneurial and become innovative. Because the more innovative they are, the more they are able to absorb the unemployed youth. And that could also create a learning ground for them to build the relevant skills needed to become successful entrepreneurs. Then the third thing I'm also talking about is successful entrepreneurs who already own businesses. How can we empower them to continue creating more jobs? Are the questions that we need to begin asking ourselves, looking at the figures that we've seen here today. Now I want to move to the second leg of my research, which is the women entrepreneurship. So when it comes to women entrepreneurship, there's always issues. The first one is, they said, a lot of women are underrepresented when it comes to entrepreneurship. More men tend to start businesses than women. And they also allude to the fact that gender-related problems and sociocultural issues would explain why women struggle to become entrepreneurs. And there's a third issue of underperformance, and I say it. There's often a perception that women businesses are underperforming, but the question is, are they really underperforming? And then lastly, there's an aspect of the sector. Many women businesses are concentrated in low-growth sectors. And many of these businesses tend to suffer during economic downturn. So with this context in place, I wanted to find out how all of this affect their business outcomes. And business outcomes, I refer to the growth, the performance, the success, and the well-being of the women entrepreneurs. So in order to understand the women entrepreneurs, I borrowed from theoretical frameworks. The first one speaks to what we call the identity theory. And the identity theory says that it focuses on the question of who I am. For many people, work is central to their identity. But for women, including myself, our identity is shaped by not only our work, but our role in the family and in the society. And this indeed has a great role in terms of how they progress in their careers. The second theory I've often borrowed from is what we call the 5M gender-aware framework. And this is a framework that covers 5 key areas, which speaks to management, money, motherhood, and the meso and maso environment. But I've predominantly looked at the motherhood dimension, which is a metaphor that represents the household and the family context. And for a woman, you know that juggling both the work and the family indeed has an impact on your performance. And then the third theoretical lens that I've focused on is what you call the family embeddedness perspective. And now it emphasizes how close work and family are in. It says the work and family is very intertwined, particularly for women. But it carries on to say that it explains how the family systems, characteristics influence the business creation process, which subsequently influence business outcomes. And by business outcomes, I refer to the success, the growth, the performance, and the well-being. So this is what has informed my research when it comes to the women entrepreneurs. And these are some of the few articles that are cited that I focused on. But now in terms of how I've applied these theories within studying women entrepreneurs. For example, you look at the identity theory. As part of my research, I conducted a study titled Role Salience and the Growth Intentions of Women Entrepreneurs. Does work-life balance make a difference? The findings of this study revealed that the growth aspiration of women entrepreneurs are tied to their role salience. However, the extent to which the desire to grow is dependent on how well they balance their work and their family. And as such, women need to craft the understanding of work-life balance by adopting hybrid approaches of segmentation and integration strategies. Another study examined the experience of work-family issues, and in this study, work-family issues are referred to work-family conflict, work-life balance, and family support among women entrepreneurs and the impact it had on their success among women entrepreneurs in Lesotho. The study found out that the definition of success for women entrepreneurs extended just beyond financial gains. For these women, success was a combination of financial, family, and non-financial benefits. Then, applying the 5M gender-aware framework, I conducted a study titled Family Support and Work-Life Balance. Should mompreneurs be treated differently? Mompreneurs are women who juggle motherhood and are entrepreneurs. And interestingly, this study showed that mompreneurs have a low work-life balance. And when you brought in family support, and specifically it showed that instrumental support and emotional support played a good role, but there was a difference among mompreneurs and the other women that I sampled in the study. Now, when you look at the family embeddedness perspective, a study I also conducted titled Family Support and the Performance of Entrepreneurs. This study looked at the different configurations of family support that can enhance the performance of both men and women entrepreneurs. So now I decided to balance the pool and not necessarily only focus on women entrepreneurs. And the results indicated that female and male entrepreneurs require different kinds of support to enhance the performance of their business. For example, in the absence of instrumental support from home, high levels of both emotional support and instrumental support were necessary for women entrepreneurs to be successful. In terms of men entrepreneurs, in the absence of instrumental support from the business, high levels of emotional support and instrumental support from the home were necessary for them to enhance the performance of their business. And as such, the study recommended that women were encouraged to make use of the resources from their family and external networks to obtain instrumental support from home. And again, given that work-family conflict has proven to be unavoidable among many women, one of the most current studies that I presented in a conference in June, and it's currently under review in one special issues. And the title of that paper was Women at Work with the Help of the Family, Leveraging Family Resources to Tackle Work-Family Conflict. The study examined the types of family resources available to working women and how they leverage the resources to manage work-family conflict. And here is a framework that the study of mine I developed. And from this framework, you can clearly see that indeed women do have resources. And the resources come from family. You can see examples of what they look like: the spouse, the grandparents, the siblings, the children, and the aunts. In terms of social support, they've got your friends, you've got your neighbors, you've got your family friends, you've got your co-workers, and you've also have work flexibility. In terms of financial resources, you see they have the domestic helpers, they've got school transportation, they've got tutors, they've got smart home appliances. Religious resources, they've got religiosity, they've got prayers and meditations, they've got congregational support. And educational resources, they've got advice, they've got mentors. But how do they use these resources to alleviate work-family conflict? And I grouped them into 4 categories. They use the resources for parental duties. They use them for household duties, psychosocial needs, and work-related duties. But when you look at this framework, I just want to play a little bit with it. You see that, for example, parental duties. They make use of the 1, 2, 6. The 1 comes from family support, the 6 social support, the 8 social support, and the 12 financial resources. If you look at the child care, they make use of a combination of family support and financial resources. If you go to the households duties, you can see that firstly the cooking assistants, they make use of a combination of the family support and the financial resources. The household chores, they make use again of the family support and the financial resources. 2 things become clear. Many women need a lot of resources, and specifically financial resources, to be able to help them alleviate household duties and parental duties. And so policymakers, I think perhaps it's time they have to think about additional support in terms of domestic costs or household costs, because that will help the women to be able to get the helpers to assist them with their household responsibilities and, again, with some of their parental duties. This will give them the time to focus on their businesses. And for many working women, they will need it because you're going to attract the best. That extra income will enable them to spend more time at work. And they get the helpers to help them with some of their household responsibilities. So in terms of the future research, in terms of what is really trending in the field, we've talked a lot about work-family conflict and work-life balance. And often when it comes to work-life balance, a lot of emphasis is usually placed on the women. But the question now is, what is the role of the men in work-family balance? That's a question we need to begin asking ourselves. And if you look around Europe, they have what they call the egalitarian roles, where there's no non-gender role. Within the African context now, we have a lot of men. We need to really appreciate them today. They do a lot of things at home. But how would them now taking over some of the household responsibilities alleviate the aspects of work-life balance for women? That is, again, another gray area which research needs to begin looking at. And then again, there is another avenue for leveraging AI to level the playing field for many women. And I ask, we need to explore how AI can harness to close the gender gap, transforming entrepreneurial practices for women. And I say fostering how AI-driven tools can enhance access to resources and foster innovation, ultimately promoting gender equity in entrepreneurship as a key area for future research. And then, a lot of researchers, often including myself, we've borrowed a lot of theories like the ones I've shown you today from other disciplines. There's a lot of call now to say we need to now give back to the disciplines in which we borrowed from. So one thing my research has done, I've often focused on women entrepreneurs. So my book moved beyond women entrepreneurs to focus on all working women in general. And this book, titled Craft Your Win, A Women's Guide for Creating Ideal Work-Life Balance. I began with the 6 months daily diary study, where I interviewed women every week, once a week, trying to understand their idea of how to craft their ideal balance. 1 year after, I went back to the same women to see what had changed. And within that year, I also sampled other women who were not part of the study. And findings of that showed that when it comes to work-life balance, it's not a one-size-fits-all journey for women. Neither is it static. But it required women to experiment with different approaches. And there were a couple of factors that I looked at. For example, your role salience, your boundary tie, your transitions, your family context, your resources you had at your disposal, and how you communicated with your family. That will enable you to craft your ideal work-life balance. So as I reflect on the women entrepreneurs, just like I did with the youth entrepreneurs, the few things that comes to light is the fact that many women entrepreneurs are concentrated in the low-growth sector. And I think that the question that policymakers need to begin asking is, why are more women more likely to be concentrated in market sectors that stunt their opportunities to become successful entrepreneurs? And here I quote Professor Susan Marlowe. Another thing that became very clear from all the research I've done over the past few years is the fact that the family and household responsibility is still predominantly the woman's job. And that indeed has an impact on their career advancement. And then the third reflection tonight is the liability of gender. And I say we need to start from the premise that the problem of the female entrepreneurs and working women is merely a demonstration of the wider problem women still face in today's labor market. Real solutions require addressing the underlying gender imbalance in the labor market, not expecting women to overcome limitations imposed by the system. In terms of policy consideration, we forever see policymakers saying that we need to get more women into the labor market. We need to ensure that many of them become entrepreneurs. Of course, that's true, because entrepreneurship could indeed help them. But then I say focusing on getting women into entrepreneurship without providing an enabling environment creates what I call a self-defeating objective, as this will result in more business failures and reinforce the notion that women businesses are underperforming. An article by Professor Leanne Stenkamp, titled Equal Pay on Equal Tax, advocates for policies such as high tax thresholds for women, tax breaks for female-owned businesses, reduced tax rates on property owned by women, and tax deduction for childcare costs. I think policies like this will go a long way to redress the gender imbalance I'm speaking about. So as I get to the close of my lecture, I had the title, Are Women and Youth Thriving versus Surviving? Before I get to answer that question, we need to reflect a little bit. When it comes to the youth, of course, entrepreneurship could thus help with addressing the issue of unemployment. But then there is a need for a policy shift because entrepreneurship is not the only substitute for employment. We need to start also considering hybrid entrepreneurship. We also need to look at corporate entrepreneurship and also empowering successful entrepreneurs to create more businesses. This will go a long way in addressing the issue of youth unemployment. And then we also now have to look at the role of AI in assisting the youth, in closing the age gap, the experience gap, and the resource scarcity gap. For the women entrepreneurs, I say, if indeed the dream is to create equitable employment opportunities for all, then there is a need to level the playing field for all women entrepreneurs and all working women. Policies designed to accommodate women in the workplace should not be treated as special concessions. Instead, they must be recognized as vital measures for fostering true inclusion. And I quote Amanda quote here. So in answering the question, are youths and women thriving versus surviving? The answer is, the reality for most youth and women is they are still surviving and not thriving. To shift from surviving to thriving, a balancing approach is needed. So before I end my lecture tonight, I would like to give a special acknowledgement. All the hard work you've seen here today would not have been possible without some special people in my life. So I would like to acknowledge them tonight. And the first people go to my parents. I know they are watching online. Daddy and Mommy, I want to say thank you very much for all of the sacrifices you made, not just to me, but to my siblings. You afforded us the privilege to study in and out of the country. Thank you so much for all of your sacrifices. To my siblings, Larry is joining online, and Maxwell and my sister is here tonight. Thank you so much for your love and devotion and support. My husband will also have him here sitting here tonight. I really want to appreciate you for all of your support, for creating a safe space for me to emerge and grow. Without your support, I don't think I would have been the person that I am today, so thank you so much. And then I've got my beautiful kids, Zina Berry and Zayan Jewel. I know often my daughter gets upset with me. Mommy, close your laptop. She'll often say that. Mommy, put it down. Shut in, Mommy. We need to play. And then I said, Zina, I just need to finish my work. So I know you've put up with a lot, my dear. Thank you so much. And I think you should be proud of your mommy today. My mother-in-law, she's also been very supportive, and I thank her so much. To all my friends here who are joining online and all of them sitting here today, thank you so much for your support. And tonight, I also want to acknowledge the role of my academic mentors. There's so many people who have put a lot into me, and I know that they're watching online and they're sitting here today. Without your support, I will not be where I am. And so today, I want to acknowledge Dr. Johan Fansil. He was my supervisor for my master's studies. I've got Prof. Atimidie, my PhD supervisor. Thank you so much for taking the trouble to be here tonight. Thank you so much. Prof. Rose Neil, he is not here today, but I did speak to him. Thank you so much, Prof. Neil. We've got Prof. Philip Beggar. We've also come along with. Thank you so much, Prof, for everything you've done for me. Prof. Logna Marie, I know he's watching online. Thank you so much, Prof, for your valuable insights and you telling me to say, this will take you nowhere. Stop. These are the things you need to begin doing. Thank you so much. Dr. Henriette van der Beek, she's not here today, but she's been not only a mentor, but a mother to me. I could run to her with all the issues that I have, and I know she's not here, but she knows that she's played an instrumental role in my life. Dr. Molapo Kubela, thank you so much for all of your support and love. And I've also got a mentor in the US, Professor Dayan Wesh. So I want to thank them for all the support and love they've given to me. Thank you so much.
Surviving versus thriving. It really takes an ambitious person and a courageous academic to pursue such a controversial but also very challenging journey in terms of research. And we wish you all of the best, Professor Neneh, on the journey ahead in terms of finding the answer to that particular question. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, family and friends of Professor Neneh, colleagues from the academia and the fraternity, also the guests who are online. In our inaugural lecture titled Thriving versus Surviving, The Entrepreneurial Journey, a Balancing Act for Youth and Women, it is clear that Professor Neneh's research inquiry is not only of benefit for the two groups, the youth and the women, but this is indeed a research area that remains relevant from a regional and African, but also a global perspective. And I think you would agree with me in terms of that. In this regard, challenges such as unemployment, underemployment, inequality, poverty have become some of the key drivers for alternative sources of income for a vast majority of populations and citizens globally to make ends meet every day. Globally, entrepreneurship is identified as a solution to addressing the mentioned triple challenge of unemployment, inequality, and poverty, but also being relied on to make a significant contribution to the developmental challenges that we face globally through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In South Africa's local, regional, as well as our national economies, we rely on entrepreneurship as a catalyst for economic growth in South Africa. And these enterprises are known to contribute significantly to our national as well as our local economies through job creation, fostering innovation, but also the introduction of new products and services as well as business models. Through the lens of the theories such as planned behavior, in her inquiry focusing on youth particularly, examined push and pull factors for youth entrepreneurs such as the obstacles that they are experiencing, demographic variables such as gender, but also notably the role of entrepreneurship, education, in the success of these businesses, as well as family background that can play a very significant role in the success of these businesses. For women entrepreneurship, she utilized several theoretical frameworks, such as identity theory, the 5M gender-aware framework, as well as family embeddedness, the perspective. She highlighted to us in her research that male and female entrepreneurs require different forms of support, as well as the importance of resources such as family, financial, religious, as well as social resources as part of the current discourse that she is contributing to through her current research. In her evaluation of the state of entrepreneurship in South Africa, it is apparent that some of the research gaps and key challenges remain a significant barrier for these two groups. And in this regard, she has posed critical questions. For example, the role of entrepreneurship from a nascent perspective, and the fact that some new business owners, as well as established business owners, remains very low in our country. that some business owners are never able to pay wages for more than 3 months, which impacts the sustainability of their businesses. But also the fact that women-owned businesses are concentrated in low-growth sectors. And why is that actually happening? And what type of policies might we need to address this? But also the challenges of family responsibilities that women entrepreneurs are confronted with that often affects the impact and outcomes of their businesses, as well as their growth, their well-being, and their performance. In her future research, she also considers the role of men in work-life balance and the role of artificial intelligence in leveling the playing ground for women entrepreneurs. And she positions her key questions around important gaps that she has identified that requires future investigation, not only from a research perspective or an academic perspective, but also from a policy perspective. And in this regard, she considers the role that context plays in understanding entrepreneurial behavior, particularly in South Africa. But also, as already mentioned, the role of artificial intelligence in entrepreneurial practices. Lastly, she draws our attention to the role of policymakers, the need for evidence-based policies, but also the need for an enabling environment for both women, but also youth, and how policies and policy goals and outcomes can potentially address that. Professor Neneh, we congratulate you on this milestone and on your research journey, and we look forward to finally hearing about your answer in terms of surviving or thriving for these entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Professor Neneh deserves another round of applause. We would now like to extend a word of thanks to everyone who attended this lecture this evening, also to the online guest of Professor Neneh, as well as a special word of thanks to all of the service providers who has contributed to the success of this evening, particularly the sound and audio visual service providers, the service providers providing the refreshments this evening that you will enjoy after this lecture, as well as the Department of Marketing and Communication of the university, as well as ICT services. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, family and friends of Professor Neneh, we would like to invite you to join Professor Neneh and her family and friends for some refreshments after this lecture and to celebrate the achievement of this milestone this evening. But before we conclude, we would just like to also ask that as the procession leaves this venue, that you please rise and that you remain standing until the procession has left the venue. Professor Neneh will be waiting at the door to greet each guest and also to thank the guests for attending this evening's milestone achievement and the celebrations. I thank you.